Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into something kind of unsettling, honestly.
Oh,
Yeah, predictions about the global impact.
okay.
If Donald Trump returns to the White House,
I see.
and specifically, we're going to focus on his foreign policy pronouncements.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we're going to be using a really insightful explainer article from Al Jazeera as our guide.
Oh, yeah. Even before any official actions or anything, that article pointed out
Yeah.
a very palpable, sense of anxiety
Oh,
worldwide about what Trump 2.0 might,
right.
have in store.
For international relations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the article suggests experts are kind of bracing themselves for a harder line from the U.S.
Blah.
on basically everything
Right.
from Ukraine to China.
Okay.
But perhaps even more, well, intriguingly,
Yeah.
a whole lot more unpredictability in the Middle East.
Yeah. And that unpredictability, I think, stems from the fact that, while Trump promotes this America First agenda, he's also,
Yeah.
making these very bold,
Right.
sweeping claims
Right.
like, ending the Ukraine war in 24 hours or
Oh.
or bringing peace to the Middle East through arms for peace deals.
Okay, so the question is, how do those promises square with his past actions?
Exactly.
And the current realities on the ground?
Totally.
Yeah, that's what we're going to unpack. So
Okay.
let's start with Israel-Palestine.
Okay.
An area where Trump has already made some pretty significant moves.
For sure.
What's his history there?
Well, during his first term,
Mm-hmm.
Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem,
Right.
recognized the Golan Heights as Israeli territory, and he brokered the Abraham Accords.
Hmm.
He was even called Israel's best friend in the White House
Oh, wow.
by Benjamin Netanyahu.
But the Al Jazeera article also points out
Yeah.
that a lot of people argue that these actions have actually escalated tensions, pointing to the current wars
Oh, right. Yeah.
in Gaza and Lebanon as evidence.
Oh, yeah.
So how does that square with his arms for peace idea?
Yeah, that's where the Arms for Peace criticism comes in.
Okay.
Critics argue that by, continuing to supply weapons to Israel,
Yeah.
the U.S. is essentially fueling the conflict, potentially pushing the region,
Closer to a breaking point.
yeah, closer to a breaking point, like trying to extinguish a fire with gasoline.
Right, and adding Trump's,
Oh, yeah.
famous unpredictability,
Of course.
a hallmark of his first term,
Sure.
into that mix. I mean, that can't be a good thing.
No.
Such a volatile region.
No, certainly adds, a layer of complexity and
Right.
concern.
For sure. Now, shifting gears to Iran.
Mhm.
We know Trump took a very hard line during his previous presidency,
Absolutely.
withdrawing from the 2015 nuclear deal, imposing sanctions,
Yeah.
even authorizing the assassination of Qasem Soleimani.
Right.
And on the campaign trail, he's claiming that when he was president, Iran was in total check.
Hmm.
But what might another Trump term actually mean for Iran?
That's the question.
What are the experts saying?
Well, experts are
Yep.
worried about a few key things.
Okay.
First, there's the risk of nuclear proliferation
Okay.
if tensions escalate further.
Right.
Second, there's this myth of controlled escalation,
Okay.
this dangerous assumption that you can kind of manage expanding conflicts.
Right.
And finally, we have to consider the influence of those hawkish voices in Congress
Okay.
who are openly pushing for regime change in Iran.
Right. So the potential for disaster is quite high.
It really is.
But it's important to note, though, the Al Jazeera piece mentions that not everyone in the U.S. supports this aggressive approach.
Right.
Some conservatives actually support a more hands-off America First stance
Yeah, that's
when
true.
it comes to intervention.
There's a segment of the Republican Party
Okay.
that leans towards non-interventionism. So that internal dynamic within U.S. politics could potentially, moderate some of the more extreme measures.
Right.
It creates a very delicate balance to watch.
All right, let's move to the conflict that's been dominating headlines. The Ukraine-Russia war.
Of course.
Trump claims he can resolve it in 24 hours
Oh, wow.
by meeting with Putin and Zelensky.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It certainly is, and one met with a good deal of skepticism.
Yeah, I can see that.
If we look at, Trump's past relationship with Putin and his tendency towards vague plans, it's hard to see how this 24-hour solution would actually play out.
Yeah, I agree.
Not to mention the potential consequences of such a rushed deal.
Yeah, for sure.
What if Zelensky's excluded?
Right.
Or what if Ukraine is pressured into ceding territory?
Oh, Jack.
I mean, this could embolden Russia even further.
Absolutely.
And have a ripple effect across all of Europe.
Oh, yeah. Poorly conceived.
Yeah.
Or executed deal could destabilize,
the entire region.
The entire region, yeah.
The lack of details is particularly concerning here.
It really is.
Okay, let's turn our attention to the U.S.'s relationship with China.
Okay.
This is a massive topic.
Completely.
With huge implications.
Of course.
For the global economy and power dynamics.
We're talking about two superpowers vying for dominance.
Right.
With ongoing clashes over trade, Taiwan, and, regional influence.
It's a very
complicated
geopolitical chessboard.
Right. And then there's the trade war that Trump initiated back in 2018.
Right.
It's interesting because while he imposed all those tariffs, he also seems to have a strange admiration for Xi Jinping.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and claims to have secured billions of dollars from China through those tariffs.
Wow, the complexities of that relationship are truly intriguing.
Right, now on the campaign trail?
Trump is promising to keep those existing tariffs.
Okay.
And even impose new ones on Chinese goods.
Okay.
Potentially reaching a staggering 60%.
Wow.
Here's the thing. Trump has a history of flip-flopping on his positions.
Right.
And who knows how his personal connection with Xi might factor into all of this.
Yeah, it's a giant question mark hanging over U.S.-China relations.
It really is.
The personal element is something we can't discount with Trump.
Yeah.
His decisions are often influenced by personal relationships.
Right.
And his deal-making instincts.
Right.
That makes predicting his actions, particularly in foreign policy, incredibly difficult.
Okay, one final piece of the puzzle. Global cooperation and multilateralism.
Okay.
We all remember how much Trump disliked international institutions.
Yeah.
Criticizing NATO allies, pulling out of agreements like the Paris Climate Accord.
Right. It was a significant departure from previous, U.S. foreign policy approaches.
Right.
His potential return is causing a great deal of anxiety, particularly in Europe. They're worried about security, economic cooperation, and the stability of the entire multilateral order.
The Al Jazeera article even mentions the possibility of a G6 instead of a G7.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning the potential exclusion of the U.S. from this important group of world powers.
Yeah, it would be a powerful signal.
Right.
And it underscores the potential for a second Trump term to cast a long shadow over international relations.
So what does this all mean for the average person?
Wow.
It seems like a second Trump term.
It seems like.
Could have far-reaching and potentially volatile consequences for the world.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
we
see a world already grappling with multiple crises, right?
Right.
Wars, climate change, economic instability.
Yeah.
And into this already turbulent mix.
Yeah.
You introduce a leader known for his unpredictability and his America First worldview.
It's a recipe for
it really is.
For potential chaos.
Yeah.
And anxieties are understandable.
They really are.
So what can we learn from Trump's first term, and how might those experiences shape his approach?
That's a crucial question.
To foreign policy this time around.
That's a crucial question. Let's delve into that, starting with the Middle East.
Okay.
Where Trump's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was unique, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, he broke with decades of U.S. policy by moving the embassy to Jerusalem and recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. So these moves were praised by the Israeli government.
Sure.
But condemned by, many Palestinians.
Yeah.
And the international community.
And then there were the Abraham Accords, which Trump touted as a major foreign policy achievement.
Yeah, these agreements, normalized relations between Israel and several Arab countries.
Right.
But critics argue they primarily benefited Israel.
Okay.
And did little to address the underlying issues of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah.
They also point out that the accords were more about strategic alliances against Iran than about like genuine peacemaking.
And speaking of Iran,
yes,
Trump's approach, there was even more hawkish.
Oh, yeah.
He pulled the U.S. out of the nuclear deal,
right,
imposed crippling sanctions, and even authorized the assassination of Qasem Soleimani.
Yeah, those actions brought the U.S. and Iran dangerously close to war.
Right.
And while Trump claimed that his maximum pressure campaign would, force Iran to negotiate a better deal, it ultimately backfired.
Yeah.
Iran responded by ramping up its nuclear program and engaging in proxy conflicts across the Middle East.
So if he returns to the White House, what might we expect from his Iran policy? Will he double down or try a different approach?
That's the question many are asking.
Right.
And there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
But if his past actions are any indication, we can expect a continuation of his hardline stance towards Iran with a focus on sanctions and military deterrence.
And let's not forget about Ukraine.
Of course.
Trump's relationship with Putin has been under intense scrutiny.
Rightfully so.
And his recent comments about resolving the Ukraine war in 24 hours have raised some eyebrows.
I can imagine.
Do you think he can actually deliver on that promise?
There's a lot of skepticism surrounding that claim.
Okay.
His past dealings with Putin suggest a willingness to make concessions to Russia, potentially at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty.
Right.
A poorly conceived deal could have disastrous consequences.
For the region.
For the region,
It's a worry shared by many European leaders who are already on edge about Trump's potential return.
I can see why.
They fear a repeat of his first term when he questioned NATO's relevance. And threatened to withdraw U.S. support.
His potential return could further strain transatlantic relations. And embolden Russia's aggression. In Eastern Europe. Policymakers in Europe are definitely scrambling to prepare.
Let's shift gears to China.
Sure.
Trump's trade war had a significant impact on the global economy. And his rhetoric towards Beijing has been consistently confrontational.
He's accused China of unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and currency manipulation. He imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, sparking a trade war that has impacted both sides.
But despite the tough talk, Trump has also expressed admiration for Xi Jinping.
Right, that personal dynamic is fascinating because it seemed to contradict his administration's aggressive policies towards China. It makes predicting his future approach to China even more challenging.
So what can we realistically expect from Trump on the China front? More the same or a potential shift in strategy?
It's safe to assume that he'll continue to prioritize economic competition with China and push back against what he sees as unfair trade practices. However, the big question is whether he'll try to de-escalate tensions and find ways to cooperate on issues like climate change and global health.
That seems unlikely, given his past behavior.
It would require a significant shift in his thinking and a willingness to engage with the world in a more constructive way than he has in the past.
So it seems like we're potentially in for another wild ride.
It does seem that way.
When it comes to U.S.-China relations.
Yes, and the stakes are even higher now. With both countries vying for global dominance. And tensions rising over issues like Taiwan and the South China Sea.
It's almost like we're witnessing a new Cold War unfolding. Except this time, it's not just about ideology, but about economic power. Technological innovation and global influence.
That's a very astute observation. And it underscores the importance of, understanding Trump's foreign policy approach. Because it's likely to shape the contours of this new geopolitical competition for years to come.
So we've covered a lot of ground, from NATO to the Middle East to China. But there's one more key aspect of Trump's foreign policy that we haven't touched on yet.
What's that?
His approach to global institutions and multilateralism.
Yes. This is where we see a significant departure from traditional U.S. foreign policy. Trump has been very critical of international organizations like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization.
Right.
He views them as inefficient, bureaucratic, and often biased against American interests.
And he's certainly not afraid to to show it. I mean, remember when he pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement? And the Iran nuclear deal?
Yeah, those were major turning points.
Those actions signaled a shift away from multilateralism and towards a more unilateralist approach.
Yeah, Trump believes that the U.S. should, pursue its interests without being constrained by international agreements or the opinions of other countries.
It's that America first philosophy in action, isn't it?
Precisely. He sees, these international agreements as, limiting American sovereignty. And preventing the U.S. from acting in its own best interests.
But this approach has been very controversial.
Oh, yeah.
Both domestically and internationally. Yeah. Many argue that it undermines global cooperation, weakens international norms, and isolates the U.S. From its allies.
It's a very divisive issue.
Yeah.
And it goes to the heart of the debate over what role the U.S. should play in the world. Should it be a leader in multilateral institutions, working with other countries to address global challenges? Or should it chart its own course, prioritizing its own interests above all else?
That seems to be the fundamental question.
It really does.
Facing American foreign policy today.
Yeah.
And Trump's approach leans heavily towards the latter.
He sees the world as a zero-sum game where one country's gain is inevitably another country's loss. And that worldview has implications for everything. From trade to security to climate change. It suggests a less cooperative, more confrontational approach to global affairs with the U.S. Willing to go it alone if necessary.
So if Trump gets a second term, can we expect more of the same? Skepticism of international institutions, a focus on bilateral deals, and a willingness to act unilaterally?
Most likely, and that's likely to cause friction with allies, empower rivals, and make it more difficult to address global challenges that require collective action.
So it's a foreign policy approach that prioritizes,
it really does,
short-term gains over long-term stability.
Yes.
That leads us nicely into the potential impacts of Trump's foreign policy pronouncements.
Sure.
Particularly in key regions like the Middle East, Europe, and Asia.
Okay.
We've touched on some of these already.
Yeah.
But let's take a deeper dive into the specifics.
The Middle East is always a complex and volatile region. And Trump's approach has been particularly disruptive. His decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, have all had significant consequences.
And there's also his close relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, which has led many to believe that a second Trump term could further embolden Israel's right-wing government. Could this make it even more difficult?
It very well could.
To achieve a peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
That's certainly a key point. Trump's policies have been seen as very favorable to Israel, but they've also alienated Palestinians and exacerbated tensions in the region. His approach has been criticized for ignoring Palestinian concerns and undermining the possibility of a two-state solution.
And then, of course, there's Iran. Of course. Trump's maximum pressure campaign included withdrawing from the nuclear deal and imposing crippling sanctions, which undoubtedly hurt Iran's economy. But it also increased the risk of military confrontation and pushed Iran closer to developing nuclear weapons.
The situation with Iran is especially worrisome. Because it has the potential to, spiral out of control very quickly. A miscalculation or provocation on either side could lead to a major conflict that would destabilize the entire region and have global ramifications.
And let's not forget the ongoing wars in Syria and Yemen, where the U.S. has been involved to varying degrees. Trump has talked about wanting to end these endless wars, but he's also taken actions that have prolonged them.
That's true.
What do you think his approach to these conflicts would look like in a second term?
It's a complex situation.
Yeah.
With no easy solutions.
Right.
But Trump's approach has been criticized for being, inconsistent and lacking a clear strategy.
Right.
He seems to be driven more by impulse and personal relationships than by a coherent foreign policy vision.
Okay, let's move on to Europe.
Okay.
We've already discussed his strained relationship with NATO.
Yes.
Do you think a second Trump term would further weaken
it's possible
that alliance?
There's a good reason for European leaders to be concerned.
Okay.
They rely on NATO for their security and see Trump's skepticism of the alliance as a sign that the U.S. is no longer a reliable partner. Not just about NATO either.
Right.
Trump has also imposed tariffs on European goods.
Right.
Criticized European leaders.
Right.
And generally pursued a more, transactional approach to transatlantic relations.
It seems like his actions have undermined trust.
They have.
And weakened the transatlantic alliance, which has been so important for global stability for decades.
For sure.
Exactly. And this all comes at a time when Europe is facing a number of other challenges, including the rise of populism, the threat from Russia, and the ongoing refugee crisis.
Right.
A weakened transatlantic relationship makes it much more difficult for Europe to address these challenges effectively.
Absolutely.
Let's turn our attention now to Asia, a region that is increasingly important to U.S. interests.
Right.
Trump has made China a central focus of his foreign policy, launching a trade war, increasing military presence in the region, and challenging China's territorial claims.
Yeah.
In the South China Sea, how has this approach been received in Asia?
It's been met with a mixture of anxiety and defiance.
Okay.
Some countries welcome, a more assertive U.S. presence as a counterbalance to China's growing power.
Okay.
While others worry that Trump's actions could, escalate tensions and lead to conflict.
Yeah.
The delicate balancing act.
It makes you wonder if he has, the diplomatic skills or the strategic vision to navigate this complex,
very complex
geopolitical landscape effectively.
That's a concern shared by many experts.
I bet.
Trump's approach to Asia has been seen as unpredictable, transactional, and often driven by domestic political considerations rather than a coherent grand strategy.
And, of course, we can't forget about North Korea.
Of course not.
Trump's approach to diplomacy with Kim Jong-un initially raised hopes of a breakthrough.
Right.
But those hopes have faded.
Yeah.
What could he do differently in a second term to achieve a diplomatic solution?
The situation with North Korea remains a major challenge for the U.S. and its allies.
Right.
Trump's approach has been criticized for being naive and ineffective.
Right.
And it's unclear what, if anything, he could do differently in a second term to change that.
Yeah.
We've seen a pattern of prioritizing short-term gains over long-term stability.
Right.
And that has the potential to create major problems on the world stage.
So to sum up Trump's potential return to the White House has significant implications for U.S. foreign policy.
Yes. His past actions suggest a more confrontational, transactional, and unpredictable approach, which has caused anxiety among allies, emboldened rivals, and increased the risk of conflict. It's a lot to unpack, but we need to understand his worldview to make sense of it all.
Okay, we've discussed Trump's America First philosophy and his approach to specific regions and global institutions. Right. But let's zoom out for a moment.
Correct.
And consider the broader implications of his potential return for the international order.
That's where things get really interesting, as we've discussed.
Yeah.
Trump's worldview is skeptical of multilateralism,
Right.
embraces a zero-sum view of global relations,
Right.
and prioritizes American interests above all else.
So how does that worldview translate into action on the world stage? What does it mean for the international order that's been in place since World War II?
Well, that order has already been under strain in recent years.
Yeah.
We've seen the rise of authoritarian powers like China and Russia who are challenging the existing order and promoting their own alternative visions.
Right.
And then there's the growing influence of populism and nationalism in many democratic countries, which is eroding support for global cooperation.
So it seems like we're heading into a period of greater instability and uncertainty.
Into this already turbulent environment, you introduce a leader like Trump who is openly hostile to the existing order and actively seeks to dismantle it.
Right. It's like he's throwing a wrench into the already creaky machinery of global governance. What consequences could that have?
Well, we could see a further erosion of international norms,
a
weakening of global institutions, and an increase in conflict and competition between major powers.
And that's not to mention the impact on global challenges like climate change, pandemics, and economic instability, which require international cooperation to address effectively.
Absolutely.
It sounds like we could be looking at a world that is...
It sounds like it.
More fragmented, more volatile, and less able to cope with the complex challenges of the 21st century.
Absolutely.
Is there any hope that Trump might moderate his approach in a second term?
It's too early to say for sure. But there are a few factors that could influence Trump's foreign policy decisions in a second term. The domestic political landscape is one. His base of support remains strong. And they generally approve of his America First approach. But there's also growing opposition to his policies, both from Democrats and from some Republicans.
So the balance of power in Congress will be crucial.
If Republicans retain control of the Senate, Trump will have more freedom to pursue his agenda. But if Democrats take control, they'll be able to push back against his policies.
So the outcome of the midterm elections in 2026 will be a key indicator of how much leeway Trump will have on foreign policy.
But even if he faces opposition from Congress, we can't, we can't rule out the possibility that he'll continue to pursue his agenda. He has shown a willingness to act unilaterally, even in the face of domestic opposition.
So domestic politics is one factor. What else might influence his approach?
Well, the global context has changed a lot since Trump first took office. We're facing new challenges, like the COVID-19 pandemic, and the accelerating impacts of climate change, and the the geopolitical landscape is shifting with the rise of China, the resurgence of Russia.
It's hard to say how those developments might shape Trump's thinking.
Yeah, it really is.
Do you think it will make him double down on his isolationist tendencies?
It's possible.
Or will it force him to be more pragmatic?
It's possible he might be forced to, recognize that the U.S. can't solve these problems alone. But it would require a significant shift in his thinking and a willingness to engage with the world in a more constructive way.
Okay, so we have the domestic political context and the global context. But what about, the personal factor? Trump is known for his unpredictability and his impulsiveness. How might his personality influence his foreign policy decisions in a second term?
That's a crucial question, because with Trump, the personal is often political. He's driven by his ego, his instincts, and his desire to win, even if it means bending or breaking the rules. And those tendencies could have a profound impact on his foreign policy decisions.
So we could see him making impulsive decisions based on gut feelings rather than careful analysis.
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
We could also see him, prioritizing personal relationships over strategic interests and escalating conflicts to project strength.
That's a scary thought.
It is a scary thought.
It's why it's so difficult.
It really is.
To predict what Trump will do. In a second term, he's not bound by, conventional thinking or traditional norms.
So based on everything we've discussed, is there any glimmer of hope?
Is there anything about Trump's personality or his past actions that might suggest a more positive outcome?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
While Trump is often unpredictable.
Yeah.
He's also shown a willingness to, break with convention.
Right.
And pursue unorthodox solutions.
Right.
Remember those summits with Kim Jong-un?
Well, ultimately unsuccessful. They at least opened up a dialogue.
Exactly. So perhaps there's a sliver of hope that Trump and his desire to leave a legacy and make history might surprise us with, some unexpected diplomatic overtures or bold peace initiatives.
It's certainly possible.
It is.
But I guess we'll have to wait and see what actually happens.
It's important to remember that even in...
Okay, so we've talked about the broad strokes of Trump's potential foreign policy and a second term.
Right.
Now let's put on our what if hats and imagine some specific scenarios.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most likely flashpoint if Trump returns to the White House?
Well, given everything we've discussed, I'd say Iran is a strong contender.
Right.
Trump has already shown, a willingness to escalate tensions there.
Right.
And the situation's even more volatile now with the expanded conflicts in the region.
It's almost like a tinderbox.
Yeah.
It's waiting for a spark.
Exactly. Imagine this Trump feeling pressure to, project strength and reinforce his tough guy image.
Yeah.
Decides to respond forcefully to some, perceived Iranian provocation.
What kind of provocation are we talking about?
It could be like almost anything.
Right.
An attack on U.S. forces in the region, interference with oil shipping, even, just some heated rhetoric from Tehran.
And knowing Trump, he might be easily swayed by hawkish advisors urging a hardline response.
Right. And then we're right back in that cycle of, sanctions, threats, and military posturing.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope that could easily escalate into a full-blown conflict.
And that's where the real danger lies.
Yeah.
With tensions already so high, there's a real risk.
There is.
Miscalculation on either side.
One wrong move.
Yeah.
One misinterpretation of intent.
Right.
And we could find ourselves sliding into a war that no one wants, but everyone loses.
It's a terrifying thought. Let's move on to another potential flashpoint.
Okay.
Ukraine.
Of course.
What happens if Trump tries to make good on his promise to end the war in 24 hours?
That's where his personal relationship with Putin becomes a crucial factor.
Right.
We could see a scenario
where
Trump, eager for a quick win and convinced that he can, charm Putin, brokers a deal that heavily favors Russia.
So he might be willing to sacrifice Ukraine's interests for the sake of, a photo op and a handshake with Putin.
It's a cynical view, but not entirely implausible, given, Trump's past behavior.
Yeah.
He's shown a tendency to prioritize personal relationships over strategic considerations.
And the repercussions of such a deal.
Oh, they would be enormous.
It would be enormous.
It would signal to the world that the U.S. is no longer a reliable ally.
Right.
Embolden Putin to make, further aggressive moves.
Right.
And potentially even fracture NATO.
Not to mention the impact on Ukraine itself.
Of course.
A country that has been fighting so hard for its survival.
A forced concession would be a betrayal of their sacrifice.
Right.
And could further destabilize the region.
Right.
It's important to remember that foreign policy decisions have real-world consequences for real people.
Okay, let's shift gears to China. Relations are already incredibly tense.
Yeah, they are.
Is there a scenario where Trump's return could actually make things worse?
Absolutely. While Trump might initially try to rekindle his personal rapport with Xi Jinping, their relationship has likely been strained by, years of trade wars and escalating tensions.
And with Trump's history of unpredictable behavior.
Of course.
Any perceived slight or challenge from China could set him off.
Imagine this. Trump facing domestic pressure to be tough on China. Decides to double down on his previous policies. He imposes even more tariffs, restricts Chinese investments, and increases the U.S. military presence in the South China Sea.
And China, of course, would respond in kind.
Exactly. China is, determined to assert its own power and influence on the world stage, and they won't they won't back down from a challenge.
So you could easily see a spiral of escalation.
We're talking about a potential trade war on steroids with the added risks of military confrontation in the South China Sea.
It's a classic security dilemma.
It is.
One side's actions to increase its own security end up making the other sides feel less secure, leading to, a vicious cycle of mistrust and escalation.
Totally.
So we've explored some pretty dire scenarios.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with something to consider.
Sure.
Is there anything about Trump's personality or his past actions that might offer like a glimmer of hope?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
While Trump is often unpredictable, he's also shown a willingness to, break with conventional thinking and pursue unorthodox solutions.
Right, like those summits with Kim Jong-un.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They ultimately didn't achieve their goals, but they at least showed a willingness to engage in dialogue that no one thought possible before. So perhaps there's a chance that Trump in a second term might surprise us with some unexpected diplomatic moves.
Maybe a bold peace initiative or an attempt to reset relations with a rival power.
It's certainly within the realm of possibility.
Right.
Of course, this is all speculation.
Right, of course.
I'll have to wait and see what actually happens.
But it's important to remember that even in the face of uncertainty and potential turmoil, there's always a possibility for change, for progress, and even for peace.
That's a good point.
Right.
And ultimately, that's what we should all be striving for.
So to our listener, we leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst.
Stay informed.
Stay engaged.
Stay engaged.
And most importantly, stay curious.
The world is a complex and ever-changing place.
Yeah.
And understanding it requires constant learning.
Yeah.
And critical thinking.
And if this deep dive has sparked your interest to learn more, we encourage you to, explore diverse perspectives, challenge your assumptions, and engage in thoughtful conversations.
The more informed and engaged we are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges ahead.
That's it for our deep dive into the potential global impact of Trump's return to the White House. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Okay.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.